I've never really considered myself a card maker. I always thought it was just a scrapbook page for me, until I realized that cards are really just mini scrapbook pages. So we are getting ready to complete these 5 adorable little mini scrapbook pages that could also be cards, but they could also be titles on a 12 by 12 page. Remember, there's no rules. You can convert these and use them however you wish. So go grab your card kits and I'll meet you right back here. We are going to complete all 5 of these cards in this demonstration video. I would just make sure you have all 5 of your card kits ready and have gone through the directions and found all of the Quick Quotes inks and the Nouveau glitter marker that you will need to complete all 5, as well as your 3D foam squares and any of your adhesives that you use to create your cards. We are actually going to start with the Let It Snow card. So I'm going to put these aside and we are going to start with our Let It Snow. You know, growing up in Indiana, we always had snow on Christmas Day. That's changed a little over the years, but I always thought that it couldn't be Christmas unless we had snow, until the year I spent Christmas at Disney. And then I realized, hey, Christmas is just as beautiful when it's 70 degrees outside. Maybe that's the old age talking in me. So I put a little pun on here to say, let it snow somewhere else. So know that you can leave that offer on when we get to that step. Just meant to kind of be a little funny there. All right, with all of our cards, you're going to start with the card as the base. We're going to fold this in half. I would suggest you using a score so that you get that really crisp fold there. I'm just going to fold it in half. When you fold the cards together, make sure that the smooth is on the inside. So that way when you go to write on the card, you have the smooth, which would be a lot easier to write on than dealing with the texture side there. All right. In your packet, if you notice on our final sample here, we have this really, really thin edge of teal all the way around. Just like my scrapbook pages, I love to double mat, so why not carry that on in our cards? Because as I said, the card seems to be just kind of a little mini scrapbook page to me. One of these days I might be a stamper, but I really think it's fun just to make them little teeny scrapbook pages. So when you adhere it to the front, there's only going to be a really thin border of white showing all the way around. So just put that right in the center with just that little teeny border all the way around. For the white cardstock, the one that has the circles cut off, we're just going to lay it on top so that it's in position, so that we know where to adhere those 2 pattern papers that you can see through the opening of that white. So you have 2 squares of the snowflake pattern paper, and we want one to go under each opening here. So it's kind of going to go like so, right? So that's why we're just going to lay that into place for now, and then I'm going to put my adhesive so that I can slip that into place. We just want to make sure we don't see any of the teal, that all we see is the pattern paper there. We're going to repeat that on both sides. There we go. All right, so that way when that eventually goes down, you will see the snowflakes there through those openings. All right, I did ink around this edge if you would like to do that. I used Seabrook, so it's a really pale, like greenish blue. Really any pale color will work. But again, I used the Seabrook. We're not going to see a lot along the bottom there by the time we get our pattern paper. So we just really want to make sure we go heavy at the top and then at the top of the left and right sides. So I'm going to go just direct with the ink pad and go all the way around. I think this will help it really blend pretty when you add it to the teal, where you go kind of the darker teal and then it goes the lighter into the white. Kind of reminds me of those snow-filled days of the sky. All right. So in your packet here, you had all sorts of snowflakes, the white snowflakes here. There should be 4 of them. Go ahead and pull the 4 of those out. And what we're going to do is we're going to adhere these to the white. I wanted it to be noticeable, but it almost looks like a faux emboss kind of feel there. So we're going to lay them kind of randomly, and then we're just going to snip off wherever it would hang off the edge. So remember that we're going to eventually cover the center, and we're eventually going to cover the bottom portion here. But if you look at my sample, see how I've just added the snowflakes here, here, and here. Again, it just kind of makes it look like it's slightly been embossed there. So there's no kind of rhyme or reason. You're just welcome to put them wherever you see fit. Just remember that we're going to cover up some of that later. These snowflakes were cut with the embossed dot collection from My Mind's Eye. So you will notice on one side there is a little bit of texture there. So I'm going to put one there. And the pieces that you cut off, you could keep adhering. So you could really fill that top edge with the snowflake pattern. Use your creativity here. I think the white embossed paper is one of my favorites when I'm working on Christmas and winter pages. I really love, especially love the white embossed dots. So once you have them adhered, we want to snip so that nothing hangs off the edges. Again, because we're kind of going for that faux embossed look. So I have my little Cricut scissors here, and I'm just going to go in and snip around. I am one that loves to fussy cut. So we want anything that kind of hangs off our original white, we were going to snip all of those off. And again, if you want, you can keep these little pieces, specifically the bigger ones, and keep adhering them if you want to fill that entire upper half there. So that's what it's like now. Let me just see what it would look like if I added a few more. You might. Yeah, I think I might add one up there. Again, don't forget to look for the embossed dot side, so that the embossed side is up. We'll put one there in that upper corner. And I think that'll do it. I'm going to put these over to the side here. So if you see, that's kind of what my finished piece looks like. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. And if you were going to use it as a scrapbook title, you would be more than welcome to leave that hanging off the outer edges there. We wouldn't be confined to the size of the envelope if you didn't want to be there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and adhere the paper that goes at the bottom. So you have this teal kind of flourish paper there. It's by Photo Play. We are going to adhere that along the bottom of our card. To me, that paper really looked like a snow blizzard seem to fit the feel of our kind of icy page here perfectly. All right, and again, I did say this was optional, so if you want, you could adhere that somewhere else journaling tag. Maybe you really indeed want to let it snow. You wouldn't have to put this piece down. It was just meant to be kind of a little funny. So we're going to make sure that we have just a little bit of that flourish paper showing underneath there. I noticed mine slightly hangs off the edge, so I'm going to snip it off. Because it's a card, we're really confined to make sure that it fits inside the envelope. So I'm going to make sure we're really flush to those edges there. Now we're ready to go ahead and adhere this to our card base. If you notice, I did stick a dimensional sticker underneath here. So since I did that, I went ahead and popped, it's probably a little hard to see, but I did pop dot in between the layers here. So I'm going to add some pop dots on the back of this. If you are mailing a card, you might want to leave it a little flatter. I don't think that it's too bumpy at all to mail, even with the pop dots. But if you're worried about that, you're welcome to leave these off. Obviously, if you're going to put these on a page, it's kind of less important. I am always super generous with my squares. This would also be great if you had already cut this on the Cricut. You could cut it again, or any die cutting system. You could cut it again out of the like craft foam, and that would give that an exact kind of pop dot there. All right, since this is a card, I am going to go ahead and peel off all of those toppers. When I am sticking this in an album, I don't typically peel them all off, just as long as I have enough that it's going to stick. Your page protector is going to cover that and protect it. But again, since this is a card, I want to really make sure it's adhered down. So I'm going to peel them all off, and then we're going to adhere that to our teal paper. Now don't forget that border is super tiny there. You're gonna just see just a little teeny bit of our teal showing. All right, now in this window here, we have the 2 layers of our snowflake. If you notice, that top layer was made with the shimmer paper from My Colors. We're going to adhere those 2 layers together. And then we're going to adhere that in the middle of that opening there, that little window. And then once we get that adhered, I'm going to embellish the center of that with my red enamel dot. The reason why I went with the red enamel dot here is the red is really a color that pops. So since that's the case, we want to make sure that we use it in odd increments. So if you look at our final card, we have our pop of red here and our pop of red here. So to me, it needed one more pop, so that's why we did it here too. So if you're putting a page or a card together and something's not looking right, look at that dominant color. Maybe you're missing it somewhere else. Maybe it's done in evens. So your eye knows that something's off, but doesn't necessarily know what it is. It could be that you need to add one more pop of that color. All right, once we get this window done, we're going to go ahead and do this window as well. I didn't want, if you do that, it covers up that entire window. So I'm going to peel these layers apart. Again, just because the sticker was given to us this way doesn't mean that's how we have to use the sticker. Be creative, tear it apart, use it totally different. And I do want his scarf to hang along the outside edge. So I'm going to snip a little so that this vellum part of the sticker can go outside of that circle. So just along the scarf, I'm going to snip up just a little bit to kind of peel those two layers together, apart, so that he can slip underneath here and his scarf can stay on front. If you're worried about how lumpy this is, if you're going to mail it, you could remove this 3D portion because there is a 3D portion in between the green glitter and the snowman itself. So again, if you're worried about the lumpiness, peel that portion off. A Cricut spatula works great to peel that off. And then he is going to peek through that window just like so. All right, there we go. Again, that's why we kind of cut him there. If you're using this as a card, we need to make sure that his entire body stays inside the card there, or it won't fit back in our envelope. So don't forget that. We don't want it to hang off the edge because it needs to be able to fit in the confinements of the envelope. But again, if you're using this as a title on a page, it doesn't really matter if it hangs off. All right, actually, let's go ahead and do the Let It Snow in the corner here. So we have the let. We did connect all of these to make it easier to put together. And we did leave off the dot of the I intentionally. So if you wanted the dot of the I, you would be welcome to use a marker, use a little teeny enamel dot, if you would prefer that, to have a dot there. It was just so tiny, we thought it would be really hard to ship. So the word snow is going to go on the left side of our blue cardstock strip. And then I'm going to put the Let It so that it fits real snug around it. Again, always using my craft tweezers here to hold my pieces as I'm adding the adhesives and putting them down. All right, so all we have left is our middle snowman here. We're going to add that kind of teal halo that's going to go around his head. The reason I did that is obviously our snowman is white, so we wanted to make sure that we could see him. So I am just going to add that in between our two window circles. And then we are going to put our snowman all together. I did ink the body of the snowman if you wanted to do that. Again, I used the Seabrook. And I'm going to just ink around the bottom portion of his body. I love inking the embossed paper. I don't know if you can see it with the lights, but it really picks up the dots from the embossed paper. I really, really love that effect. And I did also ink around just the top portion of his scarf where the scarf would kind of meet his neck. And let's see what I inked that in. I inked that in Bloody Mary here. So just along the top edge. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add my layers together. So we're going to adhere the black to the brown first. And the brown is just used, all you're going to see from the brown are his arms. And then we're going to add the white body. Again, working on all of the layers here, so that we can see his eyes and the buttons. That way we didn't have to hand draw them on ourselves or have some itty bitty die cuts. We have our scarf, which you'll be able to tell will fit exactly on his neck there. And then we have the layers of his adorable little hat. So the green is first, and then that teal embossed layer. And then lastly, we have that blue shimmer layer. And you should be able to tell how that goes because we want that to look like it's got polka dots on it. Again, that was just much easier than having all those itty bitty circles there. All right, so I did adhere him a little bit at an angle, just ever so slightly. So I'm going to use my runner here for his body, and I'm going to go pretty heavy since it's the front of a card. I also am going to go ahead and just put a little bit of adhesive on his arms. Again, if you're using it as a card, we want to make sure that the front of this card is really adhered down, because we don't have any kind of protector that's going to cover that. And then we can go ahead and add his hat. And that's just going to sit right on top of his head there. All right, so instead of the traditional carrot nose, we're going to give him a little bit of a button nose there with our enamel dot. I just thought that looked so adorable. And of course, we're going to give him some rosy cheeks. All right, there we go. Card number 1 complete. All right, so we're going to put this aside. And the next card we're going to work on is the Choose Joy. So this card here is going to be our next card. So go ahead and pull out that kit and all of its pieces. Be careful when you're pulling these pieces out. Our cards are like our kits, and there's several pieces inside of those baggies. So we just want to make sure that it all stays intact there. Again, we're going to start with this as our base. Again, I would use a scorer. You're going to get a better fold there. And we want our textured side to go outward so that when we write on the inside, we have that smooth base to work with. All right. We're actually going to put this aside because the things that we want to do with this card, we want to nearly finish it and then add it to that card base there. So we're going to start layering all of our stuff together. We are going to start with that green since that is the bottom of our card. Set all this aside here. But again, we don't want to adhere that quite yet. And then we want to adhere the white in the center. And I'm doing that just to keep all of these cards with the consistent feel there. It's going to be just a really super thin border of the green you're going to show all the way around. And if you are using this as a card and not on a page, make sure that your adhesive really goes all the way to those edges. Again, because we don't have any kind of protector that's going to cover that, since we're going to put that directly into an envelope. We want to make sure all of those edges are really down. And then we're going to adhere our layers of pattern paper here. So we kind of have that cream and red flourish that's going to go at the base. None of these are Christmas papers, but once you get them all together with the ornaments, I think that was just a beautiful choice. So look in your stash for anything that's red, green, gold, whatever your Christmas colors are. Just look for any of those patterns in your stash, because once you get them all together, it's going to give you a Christmas feel without using Christmas pattern papers. Once we get our cream and red paper down, next we have this light blue. Make sure that the patterns in this light blue are horizontal. And we're going to adhere that towards the top of our card. We just want to make sure that it's aligning on the edges there with the first one you put down. And see, not too Christmassy yet, but as we keep adding our layers, it's really going to conform and change itself to look very Christmassy. All right, so once you get the blue one down, then go ahead and add your red polka dot paper. Obviously, this is a Disney themed paper. The red and white polka dot always reminds me of Disney. I would use your lines on your blue paper as your guide to make sure you're kind of getting that straight there. All right, now we have our base totally done. We're going to go ahead and add our title at the bottom. Choose joy. I think that's especially important this year that we choose to see the positive. I am a firm believer, if you think positive, your day will be positive. Sometimes that's easier said than done. But I've always heard that if you're having a bad day, make yourself smile because your brain will still receive those endorphins that's released when you smile, and it will make you happy. So choose the joy. Do a little smile. All right, so we have some 3D stickers here, and we are going to use the holiday treats. And we're going to go across our joy. I specifically chose a really tall font for the word joy, so that way you can see that it still says joy, even though we have a sticker going through the center of it there. So when you're doing something like this, make sure it's a really tall font. All right, now we're going to put our 3 ornaments together. So for this first one, we're going to adhere together the red and the light blue layers. And this is how the die cut came naturally. But we're going to use our own kind of twine when we go to hang it. So we just need to snip off that top portion there, because we don't need that. We're going to hang it ourselves. I'm just going to lay it into place. I'm not gluing it quite yet. We have our light blue. You know, I did forget to ink that now that I see that. We are going to ink, I just inked just this lower portion here, and I did ink that with the Bloody Mary. And I'm just going to go in that lower corner. I'm going to go pretty heavy to really make that shadow really pop there. We're going to ink both layers of the silver top and our light blue ornament as well. So on the topper, I'm just going to ink along that scalloped edge. And I am going to ink that in cool gray. This one here. It's a little bit of a darker gray. Easy peasy. And for the side of the light blue, I'm going to use the Bermuda. And I am just, again, going to go along the edge here. You are welcome to go all the way around on this piece. We are going to stick a sticker in the middle of it. So if you go all the way around, you might lose the light blue. But for this, I think it would still be fine if you wanted to go all the way around. Then we're going to adhere those 2 layers together. All right, one more to go. Next, we have our 2 greens here. I'm going to put them together first and then do the inking. Just makes it a little more sturdy. And then adhere those 2 layers together. And And then once they're together, to me, that's just a kind of a thicker layer there since we had so many cutouts of that top layer. And I'm going to ink it in palm tree. What I wanted to show you with this, this is my palm tree, and I have been saying now for about a month that I needed to replace it. So I finally did replace it. So this is a brand new one that I'm going to open up here. When you very first open these, they can be pretty wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my old pad and my new pad, and I'm going to kind of re-ink my old pad with my new one. And I'm going to do that after for a few uses. So that way this one's not quite as wet, but this one's still a little bit usable. That pad is so durable. I've had this for months. And it's still, you know, the pad's still in great shape. It's just kind of losing that moisture. But that way I can still use it and it doesn't come out so wet on that first use there. All right. So each of these, if you notice, we all have, they all kind of hang from the top edge there. But to make sure I have enough, I'm going to go ahead and tie my tiny, tiny bows. We want to be as conservative as possible when we tie these bows so that we still have enough to do our twine so that they're hanging from the top of the card. So be as conservative as possible when you create your little bows. People always ask me what my secret is to bows. I just do it like I'm tying my tennis shoe. My sneaker, just like that. I know there's all kinds of tricks of the trades, but for me, that was just kind of the easiest to make my bunny ear go around the loop and pull out the other bunny ear. And then I just keep wiggling those two ears until I have them exactly where I want them. And then snip off the ends. It's much easier also to create these while we have this really long piece rather than trying to cut our three lines that are hanging down and then use the leftover. We want as big a piece as possible to create these little bows. So again, my bunny ear, loop it around, pull out my little bunny ear, and then I'm just going to keep rearranging them, pulling until I have that perfect little size there. You should absolutely have plenty of twine. We always try to be exceptionally generous with our twine to make sure you have enough. All right, now we want to hang these three ornaments from the top of our card. So the first, and if we're working with a bottom layer and going up, the first one is this one. So you can do this a few ways. You could use a glue dot here and add this add the twine to the back of the red ornament. I'm going to go really heavy on my adhesive. This ATG is really, really tacky, so it will hold my twine in place like that so that the twine is stuck to the back. And then when I go to put it in place, then I'm going to take this and then I'm going to adhere it to the back. So again, you can use a glue dot, but I'm just going to run my ATG and stick that twine to my adhesive and cut it like so. Make sense? Oops, let's move it over a hair. All right. So we're going to repeat that step 2 more times since we have 2 more ornaments here. So again, I'm going to run my ATG really strong adhesive. Make sure we get it all the way at the top so that our twine will stick to that top so that it's stuck together. And now it's ready to stick to the card. Again, don't forget, if you are indeed using this as a card, that we want to keep in the confines on the sides there. now that one is stuck. And we have one more to go. Same thing one more time. I'm going to send it through the loop. It doesn't really matter though. And then it's going to go more towards the bottom there. And then again, we're going to flip it over and adhere the tail on the back. You could just cut these along the top. I didn't because it tends to fray and I didn't want it to fray. So that way, because it can fray when you're pulling it in and out of the card constantly, and this way you wouldn't see the little ends. But see, you should still have quite a bit left over. So now that we have all of that complete, now we get to adhere it to our card base. So again, since we're using it as a card and not on a page, we want to really be generous all the way to the edges with our adhesive. Make sure that your card is opening in the correct direction there. And we're going to adhere it to the center. And now we're ready to embellish. So in the center of this blue one, we have that dimensional sticker. It would also be crazy adorable to put a little gem there. I think that would really, really set off that ornament. For our yellow enamel dots, I just followed the circles that's across that green ornament, putting the largest one in the center, then our medium, and then our small, and I'm going to repeat that on the other side. We're just totally using those circles as our guide so we know exactly where they go. And the last thing we have left is all of our little bow ties here. You can do one of two things. You can add a little glue dot to each, or you can use your wet adhesive, whichever you want to use to adhere those bows. I'm going to go ahead and use my wet adhesive. Then we would just need to let that set aside and allow it to dry before we would stick it in the envelope there. I'm putting just a little dab of the liquid glue above every ornament. And then I'm going to push a bow on top of every one of them. And the last one. All right, just like that. Number 2 complete. Doesn't it look exactly like just a little mini scrapbook page? All right, for our next card, we're going to do the Christmas love. So again, go ahead and pull out all of your pieces here for our Christmas love. All right, we're going to put all the other cards aside. And we always start with the same step here. We're going to put the envelope there. And again, I would use a bone folder. I'm a mom. Do as I say, not as I do. I've said this in a previous class. Ever since we moved to our new location, which we do have the commercial property that we bought a few months ago, I haven't been able to find my bone folder. So I could just go buy another one, right? Wouldn't that be easier than continuously improvising? Don't forget, I'm going to remind you one more time, you want the smooth on the inside because it's easier to write when you have the smooth on the inside. All right, our first layer obviously is going to be that red. We're following that pattern of the other one where we have just that tiny little border of color showing all the way around. That's exactly how I do a lot of my scrapbook pages, so that's exactly how I'm going to do my card design. Okay, if you're not going to use this as a card, just start exactly with the red as your base. No need, obviously, to stick it to that white piece. That way you could use that white maybe as a photo mat or something else later. Then after the red, we have the white. Again, we're following that similar pattern on all of the cards. Gonna have a really, really thin border all the way around. All right. Then we have this pattern paper. Again, it has nothing to do with Christmas, but to me, the colors just worked perfect with the red and the yellow and the green. Now, if you want to be really bold, you're welcome to try this side. To me, it was just a little harder to see because it was awful, you know, it was a lot more busy, but it's whatever your preference is. I mean, this is a beautiful side of the paper as well. So go with your preference. I'm just going to go ahead and do it with the cream side showing. And it's going to go in the center of the white. Then once we get that down, we're going to go ahead and adhere our title. This is, I know, where a lot of stampers come in with their cards and they would stamp these titles. I guess maybe because I got my start as a graphic designer, designing websites and brochures and that sort of thing for a local university, that I'm just more comfortable on a computer than I am with a stamper. My very first job, I did graduate with a graphic art degree. My very first job out of college, I designed algebra textbooks. So I designed parabolas and hyperbolas for a living. So I've come a long way to get to do something that I really love and enjoy. It has nothing to do with hyperbolas and parabolas. I'm going to add this splash of black cardstock here. And again, I did that to really bring some emphasis to our love. To me, that really helped highlight it, and it almost looked like Santa's belt there. So it's just barely going above the most wonderful time of year. It's just barely going above that title, like so. Next, we have our heart, again, done with that shimmer paper that I love so much. I'm going to ink, and I'm just going to ink just along the right side here, and I'm going to ink with Strawberry Milkshake. I'm going to go pretty heavy with this. And you know how when you see hearts often, they have that kind of shimmer drawn on them? That's what we're going to use our Nuvo marker for. I love the shimmer of these markers. And we are just going to draw that curve there, just as it would be like the highlight of the heart. And it does dry pretty fast as well, so you should be good to adhere it down soon after that you've drawn on it. I did adhere it just slightly at an angle. We just want to make sure that we stay inside our pattern paper. All right, then after we get the heart, let's go ahead and adhere the layers together for our holly branch here. We're going to start with that shimmer light blue layer, and then we have another shimmer that is that green layer. Now, if I'm putting this on a scrapbook page, I wouldn't necessarily make sure I get every crevice. Again, the protector is going to cover it. But since I'm using it as a card, I'm way more generous with my adhesive. To me, that's the only difference of this being a mini page versus being a card, is there is not anything that's going to protect that. So we want to make sure that we use a lot of adhesive so that those little edges don't bend when you're going in and out of the envelope. All right. This is also great if you give these to a scrapbooker who would, appreciate all of the effort that you're putting into them. But then also tell them maybe in there that once they receive the card, they could cut it off, cut off this covering and use that as a title on a Christmas page. It's kind of a 2-in-1 gift if you're giving this to a scrapbooker. Now that I have all the layers together, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it to the card. And we're going to go just right up in that upper right corner. Again, if you are using this as a card, make sure that it stays in the confines of those of the edges there. Just way up in that corner. Now I saw these stickers and I love them. No pun intended, but they're all individual stickers, not one continuous title. So I wanted to give them all their own mat to really emphasize them. And it's also a great way to use up like random scraps of paper. So it is to like individually mat your dimensional stickers. So we are going to ink all 4 edges of these. So on the 2 teal ones here, I'm going to use the Bermuda. And I am going to go around all 4 edges on both of those. It's always great too that as soon as you've completed a scrapbook page to take those scraps and immediately make a little title or a little card. Because if you're like me, you might have boxes and boxes of scraps and they never really get used, even though you have the best of intentions of using them. I'm going to go just a tad darker. I'm not very good at using scraps. I tend to save them for a couple years. I find them and then I end up throwing them away. So if you do it immediately, at least you have something to immediately work with there. For the green and the red pieces, I did use amaretto. So I went with a brown color on those. And I'm going to go along all of the edges here. And there we go. You could also use like a charcoal. Oh, any light black would work. Any light black or any dark brown would work great with those. All right. You can tell that ink pad's kind of on its last leg as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my sticker layers and then adhere them to the card itself. So we have our L, and our L is on our dark green piece. Our ornament as our O is on that square teal. And then our red V on the other teal. And then of course our E on our red. And then I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on all of them because when I adhere them, I'm going to really overlap them. And again, we want to be generous with the edges if you're using this as a card. You could also use a liquid glue here. But since the ATG is so sticky, I'm going to go ahead and just use it. All right, obviously we're going to start with the L, and we really want to go down in this lower right corner to make sure that we have room for all of our letters. And then I'm going to really overlap them. See where the L and our ornament as the O just almost meet each other there. And because we want to make sure we have room to get all of them in there. In our V, again, we're going to have our ornament really meet up to the edge of that V pattern paper. And then our E. Now that we have that, then we can go ahead and add our little holly berries. You can add them wherever best fits yours. And obviously you have more, you could really fill that up. But there we go. I think that one's one of my favorites. I really love all of the little individual mats and how that love turned out there. All right, 3 down. For our next one, we're gonna do our Holly Jolly Christmas. So pull out all of the pieces for that card. And just like the others, we're gonna start them all the same. So we're gonna fold this in half, having the solid side, the non-textured side on the inside. Make sure that that's a really crisp edge there. And this one starts with the red. So we're gonna adhere the red to the front of our card. It's going to be just a really super thin border there. And then make sure we're always working so that our card will open correctly. You wouldn't want the face there to be upside down. All right, our window here is in our baggie, so we're going to pull it out, but we're not going to adhere it quite yet. Kind of like we did on the first card, we're going to use it as our guide. All right, our little Santa has a lot of pieces there. So I'm just going to lay that on the front so that I know exactly where our snowflake pattern is going to be. And it's like Santa is peeking inside of our window on Christmas Eve night. So to get that white window here, I have just created the rectangle in Design Space, created these 3 rectangles in Design Space, and then I sliced so that I cut out the rectangle from our base layer here. If you would like to see how that is step by step, I can screenshot. Just give me a shout. All right, we just want to make sure that we see the snowflake paper in our window, but we don't want to see above or to the sides. We want to make sure that it's just in the window there. So it's going to go about like so. Yep, there we go. All right, so we have Santa's reindeer in the back there. My oldest son, his name is Rylan, and he was due the beginning of January, but we always said that if he arrived on Christmas, that we should name him Rain because the last name is Deer. How funny would it be? We have our own little reindeer. My husband at the time didn't find that funny, so he became Rylan. All right, again, I just want to make sure that we're able to see our reindeer in our window. It needs to come down just a hair. I want to make sure that we see the top of his antlers. And then we're going to put together all the layers of our Santa. He does have quite a few layers here. Pull the rest of them out. All right. So the black obviously is going to be our base layer. So after that we have the red. I'm actually going to go ahead and adhere his little hands first so it looks like the hands are coming out of his sleeves. So work with the texture side up. So it looks like that one's going to go on that side. So we're going to adhere each little hand. Oops, silly me, I put it on the wrong side there. All right, there we go. Then after we get his hands on, then I'm going to go ahead and do his body, because when you do it that way, see how it looks like the hands are kind of underneath his sleeves there. And I'm going to adhere the red layer. I'm going to move this up just to make sure that you can see the layers as they go on. And then we have his belt layer. So the belt's going to go obviously across his belly like that. You should be able to see where it goes by the edges of the belt. All right, then we have 2 layers for the face. There's no need to ink this because we're not going to see much of it. We're just going to do the inking to his cheeks to make them a little rosier. But they have their own little die cut. So no inking on any of the pieces so far. Okay, then we're going to adhere our Santa face. There we go, like that. I'm going to make sure that we have on the red layer, that red is also his hat. So when you adhere it, make sure that your face is down enough that you see the red portion at the top. All right, for the little pom-pom on the top of his hat, I did ink that. I inked it with the sky blue. So any light blue, you could use that Seabrook again. And again, when we ink the embossed dot paper, how it really pops that embossed portion. We're going to adhere that little pom-pom on the top of his hat. For his beard, I actually went ice. So I went more the gray on his beard. And just going along the bottom there. Again, how it really picks up the circles from the embossed dot paper. And then we can adhere Santa's beard there. All right, for his little nose, we did use again a little enamel dot. One of my favorite embellishments. There's so many ways that you can use them. For his cheeks, we could have just used the strawberry milkshake, but I wanted that little bit of shimmer. So what I've done is I've taken the raspberry tart and I have gone just along the edge at the top there to really make them look rosy. So kind of as I'm holding it in my tweezers, I want just that top edge. So just as you would kind of ink, but I'm using the marker instead. So it's exactly along the edge there. That makes sense? Just along that, just the top edge. Then once we have that inked, we'll go ahead and adhere those rosy cheeks to our Santa. Isn't he just adorable? So, so cute. All right, so again, we know we want to make sure that we can see him peeking inside of our window there. So we're going to just lay that on. And I'm going to run my adhesive on my Santa and then slip him in between those layers. So I'm going to hold it down here. We just want to make sure that we can see his whole face. Just like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere this tan snowflake paper here to the bottom of our white before I adhere this to the card. And the reason is I'm going to use the 3D pop dots to adhere our window to our card base. You are more than welcome to adhere it flat if you're worried about the thickness in the mail. But I like how it really brings the dimension into effect here, that it really looks like he's outside and peeking in that window. Put that over there. So I'm going to add our foam squares here so that we can pop our window. Okay, now I'm going to go a little bit bigger down here. Again, since we have this big wide open area, if you didn't want to use so many foam squares, the craft foam would be perfect there as a pop dot. And then I did want to make sure I ran some dots here along there. So maybe you have some of those micro mini dots that will work fine. Or if you use the EK Success version like I do, I use these here. It comes with that border strip, which is really perfect for spots like this. So I'm going to adhere that along each side there. Again, since it's a card, I really want to make sure that it's really stuck. So I'm going to go ahead and snip off all of those. That's always a joy when you're working with the micro mini ones. And you might have 50 of them on a page, is pulling together all of those little top layers. Tweezers. Tweezers can be your friend if you can't get them off. And again, if you're doing this on a scrapbook page, you don't necessarily have to peel all of these layers off. But since I'm using it as a card, I'm going to go ahead and really make sure we have it adhered down. There's going to be just an itty bitty border of red showing. All right, then you have this green pattern paper that has the Merry Christmas written across it. That's going to go across the center of our tan paper. And then lastly, we have our stickers here, and these are individual stickers. So you'll have to adhere them one by one, just however you want to adhere them to the base of this card here. Does anybody else singing "Let's Have a Holly Jolly Christmas" in their head as you're putting these down? Tell you, the claymation cartoons are probably some of my favorite when it comes to Christmas. All right, card number 4 complete. One more to go. We saved our Grinchmas one for last here, so we can pull out our Grinchmas card. I'm going to take a sip of my Starbucks. 'Tis the season for caramel brulee and chestnut praline lattes. I am also a sweetaholic, so it's probably why this is the time of year that I tend to gain. All right. Just as we started with all the others, same exact thing. Start with our card as the base. Don't forget, textured side on the outside. Use a bone folder for a cleaner fold there. I'm cheating. And you guessed it. We want all of these to have that same kind of feel, that same Andrea signature there. So we're going to adhere our green cardstock. To the center there. Each of these pieces are just 1/8 of an inch smaller than the piece under it. So that's how it gets that really tiny border. It's just 1/8 of an inch difference in size. So again, just like we did on the other 4 cards, the next is going to be a white piece. Using it as a card, make sure you go all the way to the outer edges. So our white was just 1/8 of an inch shorter, which means that our border is only 1/16 of an inch. That's why it's so tiny here. Okay, we have our red and white polka dot that's going to go in the center of our card now. This is actually from Color Play. It's one of their Disney lines. But the red and white dot, as we used it on the Choose Joy card, I think the red and white dot works so well. Not only for Disney, but for Christmas. All right, so next we have that pink shimmer paper there. We're gonna adhere it at the base of the card, just like so. So go ahead and adhere that pink shimmer paper. If you haven't had a chance to purchase it, we do sell a cardstock collection that's 50 sheets of cardstock, and it is a mix of the shimmer, the embossed dot, and the canvas collection, and it's the colors that we have used in all of our layouts for the Grinch and all of our cards and tags for the Grinch. So it's kind of a great, convenient, and less expensive way. And it comes in a 50 sheet bundle. There's 5 sheets of 10 different colors. And again, it's kind of all of the colors that we're using in all of these projects today. So you're welcome to shop our website for that. For our next step, we do have this green and white paper here, and it has just a little teeny red border, kind of like a little mini card itself here. So we're going to adhere those 2 layers together, and then we're going to adhere that just above our pink shimmer. So we want just kind of maybe a row or 2 of dots from that paper showing underneath. So I would use my dots kind of as your guide to not only make sure that that's straight, but it kind of give you an idea of where to put that piece there. Once we have that, then we have our wreath that we're going to do next. Pull out our little gem, and our wreath has 3 layers here. So of course, we're going to adhere the green and the yellow shimmer layers together for our wreath. I've seen photos, and some of you have an actual wreath on your door that looks just like this. We have the little Grinch face peeking out of the center, like in the scene where Cindy Lou Who peeks her little face out of the center of the wreath. When you go to adhere this, we want to make sure we have the room for the Grinchmas at the bottom. So we're going to adhere this wreath pretty close to the top of our green and white paper. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down. Again, since it's a card, I'm going pretty heavy on my adhesive. And it's going to go pretty close to the top there. When we go to adhere the bow on our wreath, if it's a card, again, we want to make sure we stay in the confines of that card so that it still fits in the envelope. And I'm going really strong on the adhesive, getting all the little pieces so that they don't bend as people are taking it in and out of the envelope. So we're going to add the bow to the top of our wreath. Our Seussian looking bow there. And then just to embellish that center of the bow, you know me, I can't do anything without a 3D embellishment. So we've added that little gem there. All right, we're going to do our Grinchmas at the bottom. I did ink the white layer. I just love how the ink really picks up the dots, the embossed dots on that paper. So I used a light moss, and I'm only going to ink along the bottom. If you ink it all the way around, that whole word is going to be green. So I still wanted the emphasis of the white as well. So that we kind of going to do the ombre look here, where it goes from white to a little bit of a lighter green, and then I'm going to go really dark with my ink at the very, very bottom. If you wanted, you could also go back and do the palm tree again, so you would have kind of that 3-color layer there for your ombre effect. As I had mentioned before, this Grinch font is one that doesn't have a shadow, so it's when you adhere them, you have to adhere them just a little off of each other. It's not an exact shadow, so don't think that they were cut that way accidentally. That's just the way the font is. So when you adhere them just a tad off, and that will really give it that 3D effect there. All right, then we can go ahead and adhere our Grinch. Just make sure that when you adhere it down, you have the room for the must part at the base. And I did adhere it just a little bit out of an angle, just to make sure that we had room for the rest of our Grinchmas. Okay. So, of course, now we just have our little Grinch face to finish off the center. Again, he's got so many little pieces, especially his eyes and his nose. Be really careful when you're pulling it out. It can be really hard with that nose because it's so incredibly small. I really wanted to add the inking shadow effect here to him, but of course, Seuss did straight black and white, so just use, use your own idea of how you want him to look. If you want him to give that kind of dimensional look, or if you want him to look more truly Seussian and not have that shadow. I'm going to do his hat first, and I did ink his hat, so you could probably have guessed by the color there. I did ink that red with the Bloody Mary. So Bloody Mary on the top of his hat. And then I'm going to go ahead and do his face layer. Again, be so careful with all those itty bitty pieces. And I did ink him with our palm tree. I'm just going to ink just along the bottom here. And when I'm inking, I want to pick up not only the very bottom layer, but I also want to pick up that lip layer there as well, so that it gets both as I'm inking those edges. And then we'll go ahead and adhere his adorable green little hairy face. Every year since my oldest was first born, who is now 22, almost 23, we've always done matching PJs for Christmas. I am one of those crazy moms. And last year I thought, they are in their 20s. My baby at the time was 14. Maybe it's time that we stop that tradition. And I was tickled pink when they said, "Are you kidding me, Mom? It's not Christmas without matching PJs." So you can imagine what this year's theme is. We are definitely going Grinch. So we'll have our matching Grinchmas PJs, all three of my boys. Again, my oldest is now almost 23. And then I have a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old. And then two of them now have their significant others. So they get to join the crazy bunch of matching PJs. I did ink. When it comes to the white, that fur part that goes for his hat, I did ink that with the ice. So we have the tip of our hat. And then I inked the top of his hat there, the fur of his hat, also with the ice. So again, using the ice just along the top. The white is great. The white embossed is great to have on hand because if you ink it, obviously it becomes any color that you need it to be. So you can create your own shade of pattern paper that would really highlight the dots on that paper by just getting us a pack of white. All right, the last thing is we have his little portion of his eyes. Just want to make sure I get the right eye on the right one here. I think they go... Let me make sure that they're in the right spot before I go adhering. Oops. You know, I think I have them backwards. It's so hard to tell, isn't it? And it probably doesn't matter. I'm probably way overthinking it. I always tell everybody that it doesn't have to be perfect, but for some reason I'm not very good at following my own rules. Ah, bingo, the light bulb goes off. Alrighty. Very last little eye. Oh, isn't he the cutest ever? All right, you can adhere it directly again if you're worried about the bulk, or you can add some of the 3D pop dots like I am going to do. So it really makes it look like his face is coming right out of the center of the wreath. I am always super generous. All right, now to peel all of them off. Alrighty, if you decide that you are going to convert these to 12 by 12 pages, show them to us. We would love to see your creations on your own special twist to these cards. You never know when your comments in our class instruction videos could win you a prize. All right, so now I'm gonna just finish this page by adding our Grinch face right in the center of our wreath. And there we go. All of our classes are complete.